Hey guys, got another video for you on creating overstuff condition in your Costco underquilt. So just a recap on my last video, we have a Costco blanket here that we've folded and created channels and pushed all the down from these squares into the center. So here's some numbers. Originally the quilt is 14 by 12 squares, which equals 168. We turn it into 14 by 11 by doing this. Now it's only 154 total squares. So that's a size decrease of 167. And we've taken the down from 28 squares and put it into 168 squares, which is a 16% increase overall in down. But we've actually put that much down into 154 squares. So there's a minimum increase in down overall of 16% due to the size decrease. So that's pretty good. You should get a lot better warmth from that. And that's one of the reasons that on stitching is working so good, is because we're essentially, because of the down increase and the size decrease, we're increasing the amount of down, and so that down needs that space we create from on stitching. But another way that you can also increase the down is, so here on the head and foot ends, I've sewn in a channel, and by doing so, this outer shoulder-to-shoulder chamber is smaller, so effectively has more down. And another way that this chamber, and probably this chamber, are going to have their size decreased is when you set this up on your hammock. You'll cinch the head and foot ends together to be snug up against the hammock. So you've got this long chamber, and we'll have a piece of shot cord that goes from here to here, and that shot cord is going to get pulled tight, which means these two chambers will have a lot smaller internal dimensions. So you can go even further with your on stitching, and you can on stitch this one as well. So this is completely on stitched from foot to head along the long dimension. And now we have these chambers, but you could also on stitch this one, because the fact that we're making it smaller right here, and I do push the down out before I run the stitches along here. We've made it smaller with this, and we're going to make it considerably smaller when we squeeze this tight with our shot cord, when we squeeze the head and foot ends. So why not let that down have the space? If you unstitch it right here, you free up a lot of the down, and you give back some of the internal space that you take away by squeezing this down. That's basically the concept, is to give this down, all this down in here. I mean, now that I've got it unstitched, it's pretty lofty, and it's like this across the whole way. So we take this down and squeeze it down at the head and foot end. That's not good. We're not getting good insulation out of it. So the fact that the head and foot end get so much smaller by squeezing it down, on stitching all of this will open these two chambers up and allow that down to have an area to loft in. Especially if we use the shot cord, and when this is hanging on your hammock or hanging next to your hammock, you can loosen the cord lock and move this in and kind of butt these chambers together. Because one of the problems with this quilt, as we all know, is the chambers are just sewn. They don't have their own individual chamber. So anytime you pull tension on the quilt, you're just going like this. You're just squeezing these chambers shut. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like the secondary suspension on here, where you have a line that goes up to your suspension, back around, and then goes to a line lock. Because you pull that tight, and all you're doing is taking your quilt and going, hey, get tighter, hey, get tighter, and you're just squeezing these chambers down. With this, the cord goes all the way through, and then you can have the cord be tight, up there at your suspension. But then afterwards, you can grab this cord lock and say, scoot it up and down your suspension to reduce this effect, the squeezing effect. So anyways, that's it. You can just do some more on stitching right here in these areas that get squeezed down and allow a lot more loft.